Hey everybody, Jerry Brown here, Groove Don't Like podcast. Today, Mr. Eddie Martinez, back in the high life, Stevie Winwood, Crazy from the Heat, David Lee Roth, She's the Boss, Mick Jagger, Run-DMC, Rockbox, Robert Palmer, Heavy Nova, Need I Say More? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Eddie Martinez. Like you've played on, records, you've stamped your sound on vinyl.
Thank you.
And it shaped rock and pop and hip hop. But I'm just curious, I believe that people don't realize how much of that sound is coming from your spirit.
Mm-hmm.
You projecting it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you hear your guitar these days, what comes to mind?
When I hear myself play today, what comes to mind?
No, when you hear those records.
When I hear those records?
Yes.
Oh man, so many things come to mind. I tell people it's all about the journey and where I was in the journey at that particular time. And it's been a sequence. My arc has been a sequence of learning and applying and being fortunate to have worked with some incredible musicians that in a lot of ways mentored me, not only in terms of how I play, but how I approach and how I think about what I'm doing. So it's been like a constant masterclass for me, and I'm just applying what I've learned along the way. But also, it harkens back to when I was a kid and how much music there was in my house. And there was a lot of Latin music, man. So there was plenty of Tito Puente, Tito Rodriguez, who's like the Sinatra of Latin music, and then you have Eddie Palmieri, and all the greats that came around at that time. Machito, icons, and listening to Symphony Sid on Saturdays. My brothers would always have Symphony Sid on the radio because they were older than me, so they were going down to Manhattan Plaza to go dancing. So they'd get dressed to the nines and they'd be getting warming up with the mambos and stuff like that, And I was younger, but I was observing, and I loved the music. But my first interest thing that was the spark for me was the Beatles, but there was always we had James Brown, Stan Getz, Sun Ra, we had Bob Dylan, just an eclectic array of music that was always playing in the house, and so that was important for me because I was hearing it. And ever since I was real little, I think even before I knew how to play, I music made me feel a certain way when I would hear it. And so I was tapped into that. I could tell if something was harmonically complex or it wasn't, and what it was about each of those things that I liked, because something doesn't have to be harmonically complex to be pleasing or touch you somewhere, So that's pretty much it when I think about that's the journey, and just wisdom from the cats, that I played with, and
so what you're saying, well, besides in my opinion, is that you're a very conscious musician. It's coming from your soul. it's
Yeah.
you're acknowledging the ancestors
Oh, indeed.
whose shoulders we all stand on.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was an anchor for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was going to ask the question, like, what did New York sound like to you when you were coming up? But I mean, you just,
Man, that was, I mean, that was that was the oxygen in my house. I mean, all the different types of music, because my brothers were older than me, and they were, I mean, they'd have sketches of Spain, on, and man, I mean, when I every time I hear Concierto for Aranjuez, I mean, but I would hear that open up the album. If I remember, I think that may be the opening piece of Sketches of Spain. It just made me feel a way, a particular
so,
way.
so with this incredible smorgasbord of groove and frequencies going on, was there one of those moments where you realize that, I'm listening to this and by hearing this is going to be my versatility, not knowing what was going to come up, but to look back in retrospect,
Hmm.
to say, I was receiving all these influences
Yeah.
from family,
It's
and
so interesting. I just I did an interview for Classic Guitar Magazine recently, and one of the questions was about my versatility, and did I worry if I wasn't versatile enough when I would go into a session? And I responded just instinctively that um, I didn't really think about it. I didn't think about whether I'd be. I was too preoccupied to trying to zone in on what I wanted to play rather than think about if I'm not going to be. It's like, when you're young and you're hungry, you're not thinking about that shit. You just want to, you want to, you want to be able to play to the best of your ability. Try to tap in what the song is offering and what you can offer to it, and always serve the song. So if you're always serving the song, you're finding out what you can provide for it. And I never really thought about that. I was too young and too eager. When you're young, man, it's like you're just like, oh man, it's like, where is it? Where is it happening? I'll be there. You're just trying to get a leg ahead, and you know what New York was like back in the day, man. It was really it was in some ways it was exciting. It was challenging. You'd go on cattle call auditions, and sometimes you get it and sometimes you wouldn't, and that was part of the deal. But it made you stronger, made you thick, your skin thicker, so you could be able to deal with any kind of adversity, because at the end of the day, we were all artists and we're being judged by whoever's hiring us. So that is the reality. And that's how come I tell people this is a collaborative thing. It's a collaboration between you, who was who's ever the composer or producer or arranger is. It's a collaboration. So you better have your communication skills really honed in, as well as your playing skills, because it's a gumbo of all those different things.
hey man, well, I think about the gumbo. It's like the ancestors are always like, baby, we're stirring it up, baby.
Yeah,
So I want to ask you this another question, and to what you just said, do you think, do you feel that New York musicians have a different sense of time and feel than musicians elsewhere?
wow, that's really an incredible question. I think I think the feeling I get from the New York vibe was a sense of urgency, and I think that permeated in the music. Without uh, New York is kind of like cut to the chase in a different way than in other markets, and I
Yep.
think I think it's the advent of, like, Well, you're taking the subway to do your session, and you got your gig bag and you got whatever pedals. I mean, because back in the early days, man, it's like maybe one or two pedals you put in your gig bag, and then you just take your guitar and then hope that the amplifier at the studio was okay. And you try to figure out the ways if the amp wasn't working well, either going DI, direct injection into the board or whatever. So there's so many things that you were thinking about, and it was different from other markets where maybe you drove to the session and it was sunny and sky was blue and it was a beautiful day, and when you're in the subways and you're dealing either trying to get cross town in a taxi and trying to make a jingle date or a session, it creates a different thing of expediency of you need to get to your downbeat, you need to be able to set up and make sure that you're ready once it's
I'm on the
started.
clock. I'm on the clock, man. I gotta get my ass there.
Exactly,
Oh
exactly.
man, when's the subway coming?
Oh my gosh, man, waiting for that D train, man. Oh man, and then in the cold, oh my gosh, man. It was, so I think that affects the musicians, whether they're thinking about it or not. I think that really does.
Yeah, yeah. So your first, what was your first big session where you thought it came to your attention? Even though you said, yeah, you're not really thinking about it in the process, but maybe at some point later
Uh,
that
I,
that you say to yourself, okay,
yeah.
this is real. This is real.
Yeah, I remember when I was recording with LaBelle and I played on this album that they put out in 76 called Chameleon. And
Ah,
we were in San Francisco recording, I think at Wally Hyder's. And we had um, let's see, we had Wawa Watson on guitar, we had Ray Parker Jr. on guitar, and I was this young kid, man, just like a little green, you know. And we had oh my gosh, James Gatson on drums, legend. So I learned
uh,
I learned a lot from that session, man. I learned how the pros do it, and I noticed the sense of calm that Ray had and that Wawa had and James had, in terms of there was this, how like fighter pilots or airline pilots, they have this kind of like, there's this stoicism that they have about how they approach their craft, and like nothing phases them, everything is achievable. There's this sense of positivity that they have about the music and what they can offer the music. They're confident in what they can come up with the music. And to me, that was really something that was such an education for me, because it gives you a resiliency, to persevere, and no matter what comes. So I think that approach, seeing them, really helped me relative to my versatility, and how I would approach music, because they just seem to have an innate gift uh, within their ability to come up with parts, and that's what people are asking us for when we do pop dates or funk dates or even rock dates. It's that they're looking for parts. They're looking for things that they cannot contribute, that maybe they want to leave it blank, leave the page blank, and
mhm.
what would I come up with? And so that was my job. I think we're all producers at the end of the day, because we need to produce something. You need to produce, a kick-ass beat for a particular track, which I saw you play me with Stanley many times, man, back in the day,
Oh, man,
killing it, and so uh, those are the things that I learned from those guys, and it was really, really cool working with them, because they were really they were really cool to me, and it was really nice.
one of the numerous things that you've said and touched on, just something that really resonates with me is that stoicism,
Hmm.
be it music or just life.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's like that was
Life.
well before I read the Stoics or Marcus Aurelius or anything like that.
My man, my man, my man. Oh man, I'm giving you a virtual hug right now, man, because that's part of my daily practice.
Absolutely. Same here.
You know. So when you mentioned again, about being around the Wah Wah Watsons and the James Getz and what's expected, being asked of you, did you feel that your job was it coming from, and seeing these people confidence, or or was it possibly restraint?
Um, I think there always has to be an element of restraint, I think. Um, and what I mean by restraint, I mean, it's like making sure what you're playing is right for the song contextually, and taking direction if the producer's thinking that can you do something a little bit different there, and sometimes you never know. It could be the first thing that you play. They ask you to explore some other avenues, and then when you play the first thing that you played is what they love. It's really interesting. It's almost a circuitous process that where you start and then you go through the process of experimenting, and where you finish is exactly where you started, and that's okay because you've explored all the opportunities in all the situations, and in terms of what works best, and sometimes the first thing you played in was the first thing that you heard, but you got to explore that road, and sometimes you get back to what it is you first played, and that's happened to me several times on sessions, more times than not.
What to play and what not to play?
Exactly. And so that's cool. And I've been so fortunate. I've had incredible mentors. Um, uh, I remember Val Burke, who was a bassist in Mother Night. We were a band out of Jamaica, Queens. And
Mm-hmm.
we got signed to Columbia Records when I was like 19 years old. But all the other cats were a bit older than me. I think me and the drummer Arnold Ramsey were around the same age, and but we were the youngsters, and all the other cats were more seasoned, and we had a horn section too, and a lot of those cats were jazz cats. So I mean, it was listening to a lot of Bird and Coltrane and stuff. So that was their world that they were a part of. But Val Burke was just an extraordinary bassist, and he came from Jamaica, Queens, where Marcus Miller came from, and Barry Johnson, and all these
A
amazing
lot of cuts.
a lot of cats, a lot of great musicians, and Val was kind of like the elder cat, I mean, but when I first met him, he was a young dude, but he's living in Atlanta, and doing great there, and so when I think about that, it's really extraordinary. And then I think about it's really interesting. Bass players just have a real connection with bass players. Bernard Edwards was a dear friend of mine and a great producer and songwriter, and I learned so much from him as well. Denzel Miller, keyboardist.
Oh, Denzel.
Yeah,
Oh, Lord. Hmm.
yeah, Denzel's a dear friend to this day, and extraordinary musician. Donald Blackman. Those two guys played
Donna Black.
together with Lenny. I mean, because my tenure with Lenny White was extraordinary. It was extraordinary. It was like, you know, my higher.
Talk about that, man. Man, I got questions here, but you just mentioned that, man. Go.
Yeah, it was an amazing time, and the band with Lenny. I thank Lenny. Just a couple of years ago, I sent Lenny a note. I says, "Man, thank you for being so patient with all the cats because we were like crazy. I mean, we were young, we were nuts, and I mean, it's like he kind of had to hurt us in, and to get us in this particular direction that he wanted to mold the record, the 29 albums that we did, which had really some really good
Right.
success, and but those are fond memories, of another time. But it was really great. And then from Lenny, Stanley called me up and asked me if I'd want to tour with him and George Duke, and that happened at a perfect time because I think the arc of the thing with Lenny was coming to an end, and so I decided to do the tour with Stanley and George, and that was another great education. I mean, playing with Lenny White, Stanley Clark, and George Duke, and the aforementioned guys that I mentioned, it's like it's amazing, and um, seeing how Stanley and George comported themselves as leaders and on each gig, and it was professionalism, but it was also fun, man, because it was always P Funk, and in the in the dressing room we're getting dressed, and George would always be blasting some P Funk before we went on, or the Solar Funk that was happening out of LA, like Shalimar and all that stuff. And
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because as much as he was a great jazz musician and iconic pianist, um, he loved the funk and he loved killer pop funk. So that really got things going in the dressing room. So it was great. And then we'd go out and hit in our own way. So that was an extraordinary time for me. And so yeah, so I went through that arc with with LaBelle, and then with Lenny, and then Stanley and George, and then from Stanley and George, I went to work with Blondie. So I mean,
So how was that bridge? Because they're quite different grooves.
totally different grooves. I mean, it's like you're going from like punk, not punk, you're going from like fusion to like a fusion funk thing, pop thing, and then all of a sudden you're playing in like a you know a an enormously popular kind of pop punk pop band when you think about Blondie and their music. A lot of the tracks that they had on their records were like maybe 2 minutes and 43 seconds, of just like of a punk kind of thing. So it was great. I mean, I went from playing School Days and and Brazilian Love Affair to playing like some straight ahead punk stuff, and it was cool. You know,
So what about Blondie? Did it feel at any since it was a different groove? Did it feel risky to you at any time, or it was like, okay, here this is, serve the music.
yeah, I tried to serve the music in my own way. What I did find was um, that the consistency of the performances was a bit erratic. So there were nights when the cylinders were all clicking in, and there were certain nights where it wasn't happening. And hindsight, I would I came from the school that you never wanted to get below a particular place in terms of performance and excellence. There was a bar, that you never wanted to get below, and that I think that's really emblematic of being a professional, on stage. And sometimes we would dip below that, and that kind of, but it was all in all, it was fun. But when you come playing from playing with cats like Stanley and George and
The
and
bar is
Eddie White
very high,
and yeah, the bar is very high, because you just can't hit the stage half stepping, as the saying goes.
and if it's not grooving, when the bar is high, you get the side
Yeah, yeah.
eye.
I remember we were opening up for Rick James. So the bill was Lenny White in 29, Prince, his first real major tour, and then Rick James. And Rick James is really he was at his height at that point, so there was a lot of pyrotechnics and stuff, a lot of bombast in the set. And but we came out and we were hitting hard. And we had this little hit with Peanut Butter, it went to like number 2 on the R&B charts, man. And
Yeah.
so we had a buzz going on about ourselves. And then there was a buzz with Prince. So, you know, when we saw Prince play at the sound check on our first gig, this has to be like 1980, Gerry, you know. So this was a minute ago. And I think I Want to Be Your Lover was just starting to creep up or just released. So we heard them at sound check, and I said to myself, wow, this is the future and the present. This cat is going to be so big. Because sometimes you could be so far ahead that people don't grasp onto it. But when you're just like a half step ahead of the arc, of the current zeitgeist is when people will attach onto it, and so we all knew in the band that he was going to be enormously successful and big because the band was tight. This is the first band with Des Dickerson and Andre Simone and Matt Fink, and all the original band. And I knew it was going to be incredible. So we'd see them checking us out in the wings because we'd be doing our funk and we'd also be doing our fusion stuff, and we'd be checking them out when they'd be on, and really appreciating and loving what they were doing. So we had like a mutual appreciation thing and it was really a very interesting time, man. It was the new shit was starting to kick in a big way.
And to add to what you said about Prince, he was always studying. He was always studying the history. And I just had a couple, we never spoke. However, there was a time like in 1994, 95, and 96, and I was playing with Stevie
Hmm.
and Prince. We're doing a sound check with Stevie, and all of a sudden Prince would walk in the auditorium and just he by himself, and he just crosses his arms, and he's just listening. He's taking it all in,
Hmm.
and then afterwards, okay, band, sound check over. We would have had something to eat or whatever, and then he'd be over, kind of hanging with Stevie, and then he'd just be by himself, and I'd see
Yeah.
him from across the room, and I knew not to go up to him. He's like, no, 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 no. So I just see him, and it's like, and he would,
Hmm.
it's like, oh,
Yeah,
respect.
yeah, so interesting. The first sound check with Prince was at the Omni. I don't even think it's still there anymore. I think they knocked that down. But it was where the Atlanta Bullets used to play. And so at sound check, we didn't have a sound check. We just did a line check. Prince had a five. I mean, Rick James's thing was they were very kind of firm, man. It's like no sound check, 5 minute sound check. You get run through one song, and then their sound check. So Prince gets to the stage, and we were in the audience. We were out in the house, we're just milling about because we were just there. It was our first gig, and just wanted to see how things are going to be flowing. Prince gets to the stage on the microphone. He says, "Where's Eddie Martinez? I want to meet Eddie Martinez." And I finally met him after they did their sound check, and he was aware. And my discography at the time wasn't really anything, you know, uh, had not gotten to the point. I think that was really at the beginning of when things were starting to make sense for me. So I was surprised that he was familiar with some of these records that I played on, that I didn't know that many people knew of. So I was flattered, and so it was really interesting. So, and all these years later, I own his Purple Rain amplifier,
Whoa.
and it's so interesting how I just found. I mean, here's this story. You're not going to believe this story. One day I was at home and I was playing. I says, I think I need another amplifier. I really didn't need another amplifier. I had cool amps, but something told me to go look for an amp that day. So I went to the local shop. I just did a story of this that I just sent it to some magazine. I think it's gonna be coming out. So I go to a local guitar shop, and I'm looking at amplifiers and I don't see anything. And then as I'm walking out, I see this amplifier. I says, "What's that?" So we just purchased that at a guitar show in Seattle. Apparently, supposedly, it belonged to Prince. Now, this is a long time ago. This is 2011, Gerry. It's not
Okay.
nothing posthumous. Prince was very much still with us at that time in
Mm-hmm.
2011. And so I said, "Wow, let me take a look." So I look at the back and I see his corporate logo, PRN Music Inc., and I see some writing, Prince Roman numeral one, and a marking of when the amp was last tubed. And I says, "Wow." So I called up a couple of friends of mine, and I called up Artie. Artie Smith, the drum cat, the cat.
Yes.
Yeah, Artie's a dear friend of mine. So I called Artie. Says, I'm looking at this amplifier, and He says, call JD. JD is a tech. He's worked with, tons of people. And
Okay.
he worked the back line. He says, Eddie, what's the serial number? So I told him the serial number. He says, man, that's Prince's #1 amp. So I bought the amplifier and I've had it for all these years. And, I turn it on every once in a while, but I haven't really used it on any sessions or any gigs. But it's really funny that the amplifier that he used on arguably his biggest tour ever, I'm in possession of. It's like almost a gift that was meant for me to have for some reason. So I've just been a steward of it for all these years,
It's in great hands.
thank you, thank you.
It's in great hands, and obviously you can't have, you don't receive gifts like that if you're not holding that vibration, the frequency, man.
Mm.
Gifts. I it's just my opinion, but you don't receive gifts like that if you're not holding a certain vibration or frequency.
Well, thank you. It's like, man, as they say, I fell upstairs with that. Oh, man.
We thank Mr. Eddie Martinez for episode #1. Get ready for episode #2. You know why? Because Groove don't lie.